Leviathans are a pretty interesting breed of monster. Now, they're introduced only in the third generation, so as it stands right now, there have only been 2 generations with them in it, including the one they came in, of course. But one thing to really note about the Leviathans is that even though we've had Leviathans since the third generation, there haven't really been many Leviathans like the Lagiacrus. By that I mean Leviathans who truly and earnestly, when you look at them, you're like, yeah, my man, he does a little swimming, he's underwater, he takes the dippity dip. We've had monsters afterwards, like the Mizutsune, who clearly looks as if he's never actually been completely underwater in his life. You always see him laying out, chilling, sunbathing, sleeping, taking a nippity nap, you know what I mean? But Lagiacrus, the one thing that I really liked about it was that when it came down to it, as a flagship monster for the third generation, one of the flagship monsters of the third generation, at least for Try at least, he always had an air of like, I'm running this, you know what I mean? So when it really comes down to the bare minimum, in my opinion, to be a great Leviathan, you have to tick basically everything Lagiacrus ticked off. So off the top, let's talk about what makes Lagiacrus so freaking cool. First and foremost, underwater flagship crocodile that like shoots electricity. Seriously cool. Its ecology, its biology, its everything is like insane. I really like the fact that he's a monster who himself is actually underwater, spends most of his time underwater, but actually can expel electricity. If I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head at least, I can't think of any other monsters that actually do this, but if there is another one, future me will actually edit that in. But as it stands right now, Lagiacrus has not been seen in the 5th generation, so that's a bit of a bummer. So we've seen him in 3U. I'm not sure if he was in Portable 3rd. I have to double check with my editor to make sure if he was or wasn't, but if he wasn't, it does make sense, because going into the 4th generation, he made appearances, but he has only ever been on land, no water. Underwater combat was explicitly only in Try and 3U. There was not underwater combat in Portable 3rd. So essentially what they kind of did for Lagiacrus was turn him into Ivory Lagiacrus. Now, Ivory Lagiacrus is just that. He's a subspecies to Lagiacrus, but he's white, ivory, so on and so forth. He actually had a particular special place in the 3U story. Like after you do the primary story, well, for the most part, the primary story of the village, there's a small little section where it's like, yo, fight the Ivory Lagiacrus. He has some significance. I'm not gonna really tell you all about it in case, spoilers or whatever. But for the most part, he himself was a Lagiacrus who essentially is just on land. He does go underwater, but he does not fight. He'll go underwater to go to his sleeping area, and he'll fight you there. Even if you do intercept him in between, all he'll do is like roar, maybe swing at you once, and then take off again. I've never actually had him fight me in the areas in between him jumping into the water, being in the water, and going to sleep on land. So for the most part, the Lagiacrus you see in all of the 4th generation games were just Ivory Lagiacrus, but since they took away subspecies right after 3U, for a bit, not for all, but for some, they essentially only had him in that, well, once generation had like no subspecies unless you were very special, Raytheon and Rathalos, and you know who you are, you weirdos. But nevertheless, Ivory got turned into Lagiacrus, and that's just how we had him. Now, a lot of us hoped, a lot of us wondered, a lot of us thought that the Lagiacrus would make his debut in at least Rise or even Sunbreak, but no such luck. As it stands right now, the updates that we're getting, the title updates, they're not completely over with, so there stands to be a bit of a chance that he may make a return. I mean, a very small chance. There have been, people who data mine the title updates, and I am one of the ones who's seen the end result of that, and unfortunately, I didn't see my mans. So what Lagiacrus is a monster, a flagship monster at that, who basically took the Leviathans and like said, you know what, if you want to be sauce, you gotta kind of be like me. But apparently he might have been too sauce, you know what I'm saying? A little too sauce. Maybe it was just the players, they didn't want to actually have to fight him the way he was. Now I know a couple of people who say that underwater he's basically underwater Diablos, where he just kind of charges all the time or whatever. I get it, maybe that's the thing, but when you really look at it, this was back in the 3rd generation where essentially everybody was Diablos, okay? Everyone just ran around and swung at you, you know what I mean? It didn't have a whole lot of tactics. Zinogre was the beginning of something new, where, combos and so on actually made an appearance for the monsters. And then going into the 5th generation, especially Rise and Sunbreak, monsters, not just, flagships, but other monsters, especially the flagship, Magnamalo, they have an insane amount of coverage when it comes to their battle tactics. So it's actually really cool to see what they could potentially come up with if they decide to bring him in the 5th or even the latter 6th generation. We know absolutely nothing about the 6th generation of Monster Hunter. We do know they're not completely tired of or done with the concept of doing underwater battles. They may been spending a couple of years, a couple of generations to cook it up a little bit so that way it's a lot more user-friendly, because it was a slight bit user-friendly back in the day, but we will see. As it stands, he's not made an appearance in the 5th generation. There's hope for him in the 6th generation, so in my opinion, Lagiacrus, it's still cool to see him do what he does. Even if he doesn't make many appearances, you still have to put a lot of respect on his name because of what he's about, what he looks like, what he carried, what he did for himself. If anything, it was because of him we don't have underwater combat. So I'm just saying, if you're so godlike, or I guess in the exact opposite, if you're so demonic that you completely cut out an entire mechanic of a game, maybe you might have been a little too sauce, you know what I'm saying? But that's just my opinion on Lagiacrus. So if anything, all this video was just to have a quick little talk about Lagiacrus, not necessarily a full monster analysis video, more like a baby one. I kind of want to do this real quick because my editor, he's busy doing stuff. I'm just talking into the microphone because I got bored one day. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and let me know what you think about the Lagiacrus, and more videos soon. Take care.